Hey everybody, Joshua Snow here, and if this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. If this is not, welcome back. Today for tips and tricks, I've got a short video on how I use level adjustments to dodge and burn without any sort of selections, and how I use them in conjunction with an RGB selection to generate any luminosity range you can think of in just a couple of clicks. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've got a shot pulled up here. It's a recent shot with Aurora from New Mexico, and I'm just going to show you how using a levels adjustment a couple of different ways can be extremely powerful. You could use curves in place of these adjustments. I am just and always have been more comfortable with levels, so that's what I'm going to use. And so without further ado, let's do it. All right, everybody. So this image is virtually done. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to use a levels adjustment to do some dodging and burning without any sort of fancy selection. Let's zoom into an area like this. It's got all these really cool textures and contours, and I've already done quite a bit to sort of extract those and make them feel a little more three-dimensional. But I'm going to show you how we can use the levels. You could use the curves for this too if you're more comfortable. Again, I just really like the ease of use of levels adjustments. And so let's say we want to brighten up this edge. I'm going to go ahead and open up a levels adjustment. I'm going to go ahead to this right side of the histogram, and I'm just going to pull this in, and that's going to brighten everything. So we're pulling in the white input, okay? And so you can see how that brightened everything, but it brightened all of the tonal values around it as well. And so if we use this middle tone slider, we can sort of bring back those other tones. Maybe we use this output black slider a little bit to help us balance those things back out. And you can see how that really brightened that area. But if we invert this mask, Command or Control I, and we grab our brush tool, and we use, maybe let's start with 50% opacity, right click, make sure it's as soft as it can be, 0% hardness. And I'm just simply going to start painting on this edge. And you can see how that brightened up that area without really affecting the tones around it. And so you're able to get not only brightness, but also contrast and therefore saturation out of these areas just by using a levels or a curves adjustment. And you can use this adjustment and carry on all throughout the image. I might lower the opacity just because I did go pretty intense on the adjustment. But if we go and we contour all of these shapes, you'll begin to see that they really start to jump off the screen. They really start to appear three-dimensional. And so if we just look at this small area, you see how that just brought all of those contours to life? Brought all of those shapes right out of the flat landscape. You can always back off the opacity. You can adjust the feathering of the layer. So if it's too harsh or your brush wasn't soft enough, just a slight blur will help, or a slight feather to the mask will help break it up a little bit. Or you can always go back into the levels adjustment and play with those sliders. And so that's one way how I use these great levels adjustments without any luminosity selections whatsoever to dodge and burn my images. But let me show you how I use them to generate luminosity selections, but not just a luminosity selection, any luminosity selection. When I say luminosity selection, I mean a selection based off tonal values. And so if we want to target the lights, or a lights 1, as we know most panels will generate a 1 through 6. Some panels have an infinity slider, which is kind of what I'm going to do today. I'm kind of going to make this RGB channel selection into an infinity luminosity selection. And so if we just use Command or Control and click on the RGB selection or channel, we should end up with a selection that we then need to use the alpha channel mask button here and hit Command or Control to deselect. Now we're left with essentially a lights one luminosity mask. If I hit Command or Control I to invert, this is a darks one luminosity mask. I'm going to invert that one more time and go back to a lights one. Now let's say we want to make this more specific to an area. If I pull up a levels adjustment by hitting Command or Control L, this will bring up a different kind of levels adjustment. It's still a levels, but this time it's actually baked into this layer or into this mask. We can bring in this white slider, this white input slider, to brighten up the areas that we want to affect. And then just like we did with dodging and burning, we can use these other sliders to sort of narrow down those tonal ranges until maybe just the area that we want to target is selected. And so let's say we're still working on this same little area over here. You can see now we've got a really nice selection of some of those highlights and not so much of the areas or the tonal values around them. So I'm going to hit OK. And now if we go ahead and generate or activate our RGB channels, turn off the eyeball on this guy, hit Command or Control and click on that alpha channel. Now we have an active selection of that luminosity mask that we just made. If we go ahead and place that down on a luminosity selection, we've got a map that'll now guide us through creating these beautiful highlights. So now I have a little bit more control with how I'm applying these highlights. So you can see that's kind of done globally, even though we've worked through a luminosity selection. If I hit Command or Control G, puts this in its own group. If I then use Option or Alt and click on the mask button, it places that group or a mask on that group. So now we have a levels adjustment with a luminosity selection inside a group. It's hidden that adjustment, and now we can grab our brush tool and using opacity, we can paint those in without having to really worry about spilling out into the tonal ranges around the area we want to affect. And so we can go around the whole image and do all of this great dodging without too many worries about over brightening areas that we do not want to affect. Of course, I'm probably going a little overboard here for the sake of demonstration, but you can see just how easy this is. Sure, there are a lot of panels out there that do this, but the reason I became an engineer all those years ago is because I really wanted to understand how things work, and that sort of carries through the rest of my life. I really like understanding how things work, and honestly, once you get used to doing them manually really does not take any longer than the click of a button or using a panel or anything like that. So if you like to know how things work behind the scenes, so do I. So I hope you guys found a couple of gold nuggets in there, and how you can use these in your own workflow to help enhance your imagery. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.